They might look human, but they no longer have the brain capacity to do anything but consume. God help you if you find yourself in their path. No, it's not the latest toilet paper hoarding frenzy, it's the zombie apocalypse. And it might not be entirely fiction. Could the zombie apocalypse actually happen?
Do you feel it in the air? Everything is changing, a world wasted by fear.
I just wanted to bring up a recent article that I came across, and it's been published by several different outlets. What it is that civilian researchers have recently found a switch that seems to turn on the predatory instinct in mice. And so effectively what they've done is they've been able to produce these zombie-like, robot-like hunting machines in mice. Now, I say civilian because I must speak on it in a second or two, but this type of research has been going on for a long time, and this is just the next step in evolution in this type of research and activity. Now, what it is that when certain parts of the mice's brain were stimulated with light, they displayed a complex array of different types of hunting activities. Now, predatory behaviors like grabbing and biting, they're familiar to mice, but the brain circuits involved in doing this remained a mystery to civilians until recently. Now, what they've discovered is that this activity is centered in a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is an almond-shaped area of the brain, and it's involved in producing emotions like fear and other intense survival type of emotions. Now, what they did is to activate the central amygdala in mice, there was a researcher named Ivan de Arajo, and he's a neurobiologist at Yale University in Connecticut. Him and his colleagues used a technique they called optogenetics. And first, they infected the mice with a virus that made the neurons in the brains sensitive to blue light. And then what they did is they used a tiny fiber optic to shine a blue laser on the mice's amygdala. Now, this prompted the animals to tense their jaw and neck muscles, and the behavior didn't occur when the researchers stimulated other parts of the brain. So when the laser was on, the mice hunted just about everything in their path, from edible things like, crickets, other stuff that could be hunted and eaten, to non-edible things like bottle caps, erasers, things of that nature. And the researchers also observed that the same activity when they triggered the amygdala with chemogenetics is the same thing that they did when they used optogenetics. So chemogenetics is using a similar technique that uses molecules or chemicals rather than light. Now, this is important because we're going to come back to that in a second as well. Now, the hunting and feeding behaviors, they even happen when there was nothing to hunt. For instance, when the mice in an empty cage had their amygdalas activated, they stopped whatever they were doing. They positioned themselves upright with their front legs as if they were holding food and moved their mouths as if they were chewing. So this is ridiculous if you didn't think about it, because picture a human being that for no obvious reason to the people around them was sitting writing or talking or walking or doing whatever it is. And all of a sudden they just stopped and became like a zombie or a robot. And they just held their hand up and act like they were shoveling food in their mouth with a fork, but there was nothing in their hand and they weren't eating anything. You couldn't snap them out of it, and it came out of nowhere. This is exactly what they seemingly have done with these mice. So that shows that is a complete control of the mind. Now, to bring this back to human applications, MK is a program that was started in like the 50s and 60s from the CIA and the American government. Now, and it's been declassified now, so this is well-known information. Now, what they focused on was the use of chemicals, like they did with the mice, and biological agents to manipulate human behavior and memory. Now, biological agents is interesting because, like in the mice, these civilian researchers have recently used viruses to infect the mice, and then that would be used to stimulate the amygdala. Now, medical research and science has known for a while that certain viruses can have an effect or an impact on people's behaviors and other things like, compulsive behaviors later in life, aggressive behaviors, and certain things. Research has shown that there can be a connection between a viral infection when someone was a small child or even in adolescence, and sometimes in young adulthood, and the onset of certain pathologies or mental disorders. So there's an interesting tie between that, and the government and military have known of this connection for a long time and have been using it to, promote these programs that they're doing. In addition to this, there were other brainwashing techniques used to increase the effectiveness of these MK Ultra programs. And so they do things such as sleep deprivation, electronic stimulation, the use of LSD and other drugs or other chemicals, which would be chemogenetics. So they would combine all of these things together to effectively wipe a person's mind and make it like a blank slate. And then they could program things in. They could make them do things at certain points. This is similar to the books and then subsequent movies that have been written on things such as the Manchurian Candidate, where an individual can just live a normal life, it seems, and then a certain series of events using some type of stimulation here or there, they just become a robot and they perform whatever commands that they're given by the individuals or the groups that have programmed them. And the person themselves is not even aware of it. Now, what we have learned is that we can influence mood using different frequencies as well. There's something called the FFR, which is the frequency following response. And this can even induce physical sickness in individuals, in addition to inducing certain behaviors and emotional responses. What we found is like sound waves at certain frequencies, even though they're inaudible, can cause vomiting, diarrhea, nausea, and incapacitate a person. And so the evolution of this would go on to things like the microwave auditory effect, which is patented by the U.S. Navy, I believe it is. Now, this microwave auditory effect is effectively putting a voice in someone's head that's not audible to anyone else using pulsed microwaves. Now, what it does is this was first realized in the old World War. I believe it was World War I, where people that operated radars indicated that they could hear a click in their inner ear whenever the microwave was pulsed. And so what we've done now with the advent of more advanced computers, they can pulse these small microwave bursts so that you can hear intelligible voices in your head. Now, the first unclassified successful transmission of the human voice directly into the skull of another living person was performed, and it was performed by Dr. Joseph C. Sharp of the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research in 1974, which is a long time ago. Now, in addition to this, in 2004, the Waveband Corporation had a contract from the U.S. Navy to develop a microwave auditory effect weapon that they called m.e.d.u.s.a. And m.e.d.u.s.a stands for Mob Excess Deterrent Using Silent Audio. So, and this weapon was intended to remotely incapacitate personnel, but supposedly the project was canceled in 2005. So all of these things come together and they show that it's an evolution of these things that just initially used chemical agents and biological agents, and they progressively went into technological or electronic means. And now we're to the point that they are admitting openly, even in the civilian world, to be able to control a living organism, a vertebrate. And they've been focusing on vertebrates, which are higher level animals, to make them into robots, that they can do exactly what you command them to do. And this is also very important because what you do is you see things in the news and it makes you think twice about looking at people like they're crazy. To call someone crazy, I've always thought is just to be dismissive. We need to look into stuff like this and don't dismiss people as being crazy. Our government has been known in certain, I won't say government as a whole, but certain unregulated compartments or entities within our government that operate with impunity have been known since Tuskegee and before, and even with the early projects with MK Ultra, testing LSD and other things out on people, which was illegal. But these compartments have been known to do things to test out their methods on individuals. So this is stuff to be aware of, stuff to stay vigilant about, and to keep on top of. I'll continue to look into things like this, and I might make another video in the future, because this is a very deep, winding web of stuff, and it's impossible to talk about it all in one video.